everybody. Shh. Those of you who are talking, you really don't want to miss this conversation. This is the AI equivalent of having the Beatles and the Rolling Stones in the same place. So please listen to these two gentlemen, because you have all talked about AI all morning. Shh. Thank you. You've all talked about AI all morning. We have on stage now two of the handful of people who are going to build this future. They need no introduction. I'm going to do you in alphabetical order. So Dario Amodei, co-founder and CEO of Anthropic. Sir Demis Hassabis, co-founder and CEO of Deepmind, and Nobel Laureate. Thank you for joining me. I think the last time these two were on stage together was in the fall of 2023, a lifetime ago in the development of AI. So you really are lucky. So I'm going to interrupt if people start talking again, because this really matters. Shh. Let us start with where you are on timelines and definitions of AGI. When do you think we're going to get there, and what is your definition of AGI? And Dario, I'm going to start with you, because you and I had a conversation a few weeks ago, so I can correct you if you say something different.
Yes. So a few months ago, I wrote this essay called Machines of Loving Grace, in which I laid out what some of the positive applications of powerful AI might look like, and I indeed noted that often when we say things like AGI and superintelligence, these things aren't very well defined. And so the definition I gave is that I think is well defined is when we're at the point where we have a model, an AI model that can do everything a human can do, at the level of a Nobel laureate, like the one sitting next to me, across many fields. Can do anything a human can do remotely, can do tasks that take minutes, hours, days, months. And the way I encapsulated it as was a country of geniuses in a data center, right? So it's like we plop down, somewhere in the world in some data center in Finland or wherever, 10 million people who are more capable than almost anyone. And when I think about when we're most likely to get that, my guess is that we'll get that in 2026 or 2027.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. Shh. Those of you who didn't hear that, in 2026 or 2027, which is next year or the year after, we are going to have countries of geniuses in data centers, AIs that are better than Nobel Prize level intelligence across the range of human capabilities. That is very soon, which is why those of you who are still talking should listen to this. Demis, do you agree with that? I think you've thought this was a bit further away.
Yeah, so, we've been working on and thinking about AGI for a long time, and we don't disagree about too much. I think the timelines are a little bit longer. The way I would define AGI is a system that can exhibit all the cognitive capabilities humans can. And that's important because the human mind is the only example maybe that we know of in the universe that is a general intelligence. Okay, so, and if you want a more formal definition, then you can look at Alan Turing and his definition of Turing machines, which obviously foundation of all of computer science. And the brain is probably a kind of Turing machine, as far as we know. And so if we can mimic the capabilities of the brain, then we know we have a very, very general system. So, of course, how to test that is the big question. One can test on thousands of different tasks that humans can do and sort of see and measure how well the machines do. But the one I'm really looking for, and why I think it's a little bit further out, maybe 50% chance of in 5 years' time, so maybe by the end of the decade, which is still extraordinarily soon if you think through what we're talking about. I think we don't have systems yet that could have invented general relativity when Einstein did with the information that he had available at the time. Or another example I give is, can you invent a game like Go, not just play a great move like Move 37 or build AlphaGo that can beat the world champion? Could you actually invent a game that's as beautiful aesthetically and so on as Go is? And the answer to that at the moment is no to both of those types of invention. So I think it's going to take a little bit longer to get that kind of capability.
So you think 50% chance by the end of the decade of a capability of a new theorem, inventing a game like Go. Does that mean, Dario, that the two of you actually agree because you have slightly different definitions? Or do you think that we will have capability to do what Demis defines AGI as by 26, 27?
No, I think the definitions are actually relatively similar. So this might be, you know, I think Demis and I agree on almost everything. You've probably identified one of the few areas where we have a disagreement, and you know, we've talked about it. We've talked about it a number of times. I mean, Demis could easily be right about this. I mean, you know, prediction is very difficult, right? And particularly in this area, you know, if there's one thing I would point to that kind of points me towards the shorter timelines, it's the fact that I think we're starting to get to the point where the AI systems are themselves helping us to make better AI systems. We're starting to get around that loop, right? The acceleration right now might be 10 or 20%, but as that starts to loop around, things will happen faster. And I would also say the kind of extraordinary progress that we've seen in getting the models to reason, in getting them to think, in getting them to generalize better, it's just at the beginning, but kind of the exponential can catch you by surprise. And so my guess is that it will, but you know, I'm not certain.
I mean, the other thing to say is these are probability distributions, right? So everyone wants just a number like this binary date. So it's 50% chance. So what I mean by that, I wouldn't be shocked if the timeline was shorter, like Dario's thinking, especially if something like self-improvement takes off, or these kind of AlphaZero-like mechanisms, or if we build systems that can help us code, which everyone's working on. Obviously, that could accelerate things. I'd be pretty shocked if it took longer than 10 years, though, so from here. So that's where
so
somewhere in that
we've
zone.
got a sense of the timeline, and it's pretty damn soon. And we've just had 2 days of discussion here in Paris about how to deal with this world, and we'll come to this in a second, but it seems that there's not a lot of agreement on how to deal with it if you look around the world. But I want to, before I get into that safety side, I want to how does the world change when you reach here? And sort of three subcomponents. Is this incremental capability enhancement, or is there a kind of threshold moment when the AIs are smart enough to train other genius-level AIs, and so whoever gets there first has an unassailable lead? Dario.
Yeah, so I've thought about this and worried about this in the context of geopolitics, right? Where, you know, if I think about you know, what happens if one part of the world is able to make AIs that build AIs faster than another part of the world. I think it's maybe not as true between companies, because you know we're all kind of under the same framework of law. There are rules to how you operate, but I worry about it maybe more in the context of geopolitics, where you know the kind of range of abilities that nations have, right? There kind of are no rules. And so, you know, I think that's an area of worry, and I worry in particular that authoritarian states, if they got ahead in this area, you know, could imperil everything that we hold dear. And you know, I've always wanted to make sure that doesn't happen. You know, at the same time as we have a bunch of important, you know, we have to build carefully, you know, in order to grapple with the dangers of the technology we ourselves build, while at the same time we have to make sure that, you know, the authoritarians on the other side of the world aren't so far ahead that they can achieve military dominance. So we're in a tough situation.
But Demis, let's drill down on that, and I mean, it's my job to be a bit provocative. This is happening at the same time as we are in the midst of a massive geopolitical shock. We have the United States under the new administration tearing up all kinds of long-standing international norms. We had a very feisty speech from the Vice President Vance yesterday. How do you see the fact that in coming years we're going to be very soon getting to AGI, at the same time as I think it's not controversial to say we don't have anything like a particularly cooperative international environment?
Well, look, I think the geopolitical complexities are very worrying. I think that's why these kinds of summits are very important, and I was very supportive of the UK one, the South Korea, and now this one, because it's important that we all get in the room and start discussing this. I think also governments need to become more aware of what's at stake. I think actually this relates to the timelines and also your other question about what happens after we have AGI. I think that people haven't understood that well enough yet. I would say that AI is, it's hard for it to be more hyped than it is right now. I would say it's overhyped in the near term, despite how, even though it's super impressive, but still underappreciated what it's going to do how much it's going to change things in the medium to longer term. And I think once that's more understood, I think there'll be more a basis to have international cooperation around it. I think in the end there has to be around regulations and how we want to deploy these systems and how the last few steps that we take on the research side to ensure that these systems are safe and controllable and understandable and so on, the first AGI systems that humanity builds. So I think there will have to be some sort of dialogue on that.
So at some point you think people will wake up and say, actually, we can't just go it alone and we need to have some global norms?
Well, my hope is, and I've talked a lot about in the past about a kind of a CERN for AGI type setup where basically an international research collaboration on the last sort of few steps that we need to take towards building the first AGIs. I think what's at stake isn't fully understood yet, which is why people are thinking in the way they are at the moment.
Dario, you called this AI Summit declaration a missed opportunity. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, particularly if the timelines I've listed are right, but, I think even if the timelines Demis has listed are correct, which at the end of the day aren't that different, we're on the eve of something that has great challenges, right? If the country of geniuses in a data center really is coming, then there are global security problems associated with that. It's going to greatly upend the balance of power. There are, kind of risks of AI autonomy associated with that, where if someone dropped a new country into the world, 10 million, 10 million people smarter than any human alive today, you'd ask the question, what is their intent? What are they actually going to do in the world, particularly if they're able to act autonomously? There are obviously going to be very large effects on the economy. They're going to be very, very productive. It'll greatly increase economic activity. But, like past changes, but more so, it's going to be very disruptive. And so, this is a wide range of issues that, I would expect if there were a gathering of world leaders that, and this were about to happen, if it were widely understood that this was about to happen, that there would be, discussion of those issues. And I think it's unfortunate that there wasn't more discussion of those issues. There was in the earlier summit in the UK held in 2023, the one at Bletchley Park, and I hope that future summits kind of reclaim this mantle.
So, put perhaps a little simplistically, the view in the US right now is we're going to go hell for leather. No real focus on regulation. We need the US to dominate this technology. And the view in Europe has been, even though we don't have an awful lot of this, we're going to regulate, and perhaps too much regulation. Demis, where do you think the balance should be, and who's got it more right?
Well, I mean, you won't be surprised to hear, I think that balance needs to be somewhere in the middle of that. I think that we need to embrace the incredible opportunities that AI is going to bring. I'm especially passionate in areas of science and medicine. I think it's going to revolutionize those fields. Obviously, our work on AlphaFold and other things. I think that in the next decade, for example, most diseases might be curable with the help of AI, helping drug discovery. And I think it'll help with climate, all these massive challenges. So we've got to embrace that, and the economic benefits and productivity benefits, and individual countries and regions need to do that. But we've also got to be aware of the risks. The two big risks that I talk about are bad actors repurposing this general purpose technology for harmful ends. How do we enable the good actors and restrict access to the bad actors? And then secondly is the risk from the AGI or agentic systems themselves getting out of control or not having the right values or the right goals. And both of those things are critical to get right. And I think the whole world needs to focus on that.
can I ask you both of you actually, a more personal question about this? Because you are personally leading companies that are likely to be at the forefront of this. So the personal decisions you make are going to shape this technology. Do you ever worry about ending up like Robert Oppenheimer?
Look, I worry about those kinds of scenarios all the time. That's why I don't sleep very much. I mean, there's a huge amount of responsibility on the people, probably too much, on the people leading this technology. I think that's why us and others are advocating for, we probably need new institutions to be built to help govern some of this. You know, I talked about CERN. I think we need a kind of equivalent of an IAEA atomic agency to monitor sensible projects and those that are more risk-taking. I think, you know, we need to think about that. The society needs to think about what kind of governing bodies are needed. Ideally, it would be something like the UN, but given the geopolitical complexities, that doesn't seem very possible. So, you know, we worry about all that all the time, and we just try to do, at least on our side, everything we can in the vicinity and influence that we have, including, for me as well, helping with the UK government, helping them actually set what I think is a sensible middle road here between innovation and sort of safety measures. And I think that's the best we can do.
Dario, are you sleeping well?
Yeah, my thoughts exactly echo Demis. So my feeling is that almost every decision that I make feels like it's kind of balanced on the edge of a knife. Like, you know, if we don't build fast enough, then the authoritarian countries could win. If we build too fast, then the kinds of risks that Demis is talking about and that we've written about a lot, you know, could prevail. And you know, either way, I'll feel that it was my fault that, you know, we didn't make exactly the right decision. And I also agree with Demis that this idea of, you know, governance structures outside ourselves, I think these kinds of decisions are too big for any one person. And, you know, so for example, Anthropic has this governance structure, the long-term benefit trust, that's kind of responsible for keeping us in line with our public benefit mission. And, you know, people say, why do you, you know, constrain yourself like this? In a way, I think of it as a selfish thing, because I think putting this level of decision-making in the hands of one person, in addition to being a bad idea, it's just not, you know, it's not the way to lead to good decisions, right? All of the important decisions that are made at the level of humanity, they have to be, the authority has to be spread between people. It has to be balanced. One level of that within Anthropic is our long-term benefit trust, but then also, yeah, this idea of global institutions of governance to think about this technology. And, you know, we're still struggling with this. You know, as you alluded to, not everyone in the world has the same perspective. And so, you know, some countries in a way are adversarial on this technology. But even within all those constraints, I think we somehow have to find a way to build a more robust governance structure that doesn't put this in the hands of just a few people.
And even if you wanted to do that, and right now the geopolitics is not helping that, is it actually still possible? And how much has what one might call the deep-seek moment, the sense that it's much easier to catch up much faster than people realized, changed your thinking about this? Because maybe it's no longer possible that a small group of leading model founders can get together and kind of define the terms.
Well, look, I think that just, you know, DeepSeek and these kinds of advents of these types of advances, I think just sort of shows that some sort of international dialogue is going to be needed, I think. And it's going to affect the whole world, this technology, all of humanity. So I think all of humanity needs to be sort of involved in the decision-making around this. And it's funny to me that actually people don't listen as much as I feel they should do when, and it's sort of, these fears are sometimes written off by others as sort of Luddite thinking or deceleration and so on. But I've never heard a situation in the past where the people at the leading the field are sort of also expressing caution. You know, I would say I'm a cautious optimist. So I've worked on this my whole life because of all the amazing things I think AI is going to bring in science and medicine and other things. But we got to take the last steps. We're dealing with something unbelievably transformative, incredibly powerful that we've not seen before. It's not just another technology. I think there's still a lot of, you can hear from a lot of the speeches at the summit, still people are regarding this as a very important technology, but still another technology.
I'm very struck by that.
It's different in category, and I don't think everyone's fully understood that. That's the part I mean about not fully understanding the full implications of a post-AGI world.
Yeah, the two most sober conversations I've had in the past few years about AI are with each of you separately, but the two people who I thought really think this could be seriously dangerous, as well as being brilliantly, transformatively for the good, which you've both emphasized. Given that, and given that others don't get it, do you think we can avoid there having to be some kind of a disaster before minds are... Because let's think about the UN. The UN was born in the aftermath of World War II. It wasn't like people kind of got together. They created the League of Nations after World War I, and it didn't work. So what should give us all hope that we will actually get together and create this until something happens that demands it?
So yeah, we've thought about this at Anthropic a fair amount, which is that we've made attempts to demonstrate some of the dangers of AI systems in kind of a lab setting so that they don't have to happen in the real world. So I definitely agree with you. Like, one way to wake everyone up is if everyone wakes up one day and they learn that some terrible disaster has happened that's, killed a bunch of people or caused an enormous security incident, that would be one way to do it. Obviously, that's not what we want to happen. So we've worked on demonstrating some of these dangers in the lab. Back in 2023, we did some work on, can AI systems, generate information that you couldn't find on Google or in a textbook that could be useful for generating bioweapons, right? Could a terrorist or a non-state actor use this? We came to the conclusion, yeah, it's just starting to be able to do that a little bit. It's not really dangerous yet, but each model gets better than the model before it. And so every time we have a new model, we test it, we show it to the national security people, we say, like, hey, this is the point we're at in terms of where the models are. Similarly, we've done a lot of research showing this kind of AI autonomy loss of control risk. We had a paper a couple months ago which shows that basically that when you train an AI model, it always does what you train it to do, but sometimes the implications of that are unpredictable. So for example, we train the model to be, good and friendly and have positive pro-humanity values. Then, as an exercise in the lab, we told the model that the people who trained it, us Anthropic, were secretly evil. And after we did this, the model started lying to us. When we asked it to do things for us, it started lying about the tasks. It wouldn't, because it went through the chain of logic. Okay, I'm a good AI. These people are evil, so I'm gonna lie to them. So that's the expected behavior, and yet it shows the unpredictability of the systems. And I think we need substantially stronger evidence, like 10 times stronger evidence, which may or may not exist because we don't know for sure how real the risks are. But if we're able to demonstrate risks that are really compelling, and I hope we don't. I hope what we show is that actually there's nothing to worry about. If there is something to worry about, I hope we can show it in the lab. If we can't show it in the lab, then we may need to see it in the real world, and that would be a very bad outcome. But I guess less bad than if we never find out and there's a much bigger disaster.
So we've focused on the risks here because I think they are important and perhaps underplayed right now. But I don't want to end on that note because I know that both of you are primarily focused on the tremendous opportunities and kind of world-changing benefits. So let's end with two very concrete things. One thing that we should all look for in the next year that suggests we are on the path that you're looking forward to, and one positive thing that will come from it, both of you.
Well, look, I think in the next year we're going to see agent-based systems, so systems that are able to accomplish tasks sort of on their own, achieve things for you, act in the world, come into their own. And I think that will then create a whole new category of useful systems. assistant type systems that can save you time, increase productivity. I think we'll start seeing be used much more widely in everyday life rather than the fairly niche applications that current systems are used for. And then in the future, I hope for seeing these AI systems that are inventive. So they don't just solve a maths conjecture, they actually propose one that's super interesting, right? Or a new theory.
Dario.
I would look at code and AI models able to do AI research. If we're getting to the point where by the end of this year, we're increasing by 50% or even doubling the total factor productivity of producing AI systems, that would be an indicator that the timelines I've indicated we're on track for. If it's a lot slower than that, then I would definitely shift towards thinking there's a substantial chance that Demis's picture of the world, which I think is still quite aggressive, but a little less aggressive, is more likely to be correct.
Thank you both so much. I think we can conclude by saying that if only this development were in hands like this alone, we could all breathe a lot easier. Thank you very much indeed, Demis and Dario.
Thank you.
Thanks.